Okay, so lowering it lower than it normally sits, that's the ticket. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Behind me is a 2017 Hyundai Sonata. Now the ultimate failure on this is the timing chain tensioner, but we're gonna go ahead and replace everything. The cover has to come off anyway to replace the tensioner. Who knows how long it's been slapping around in there, what other damage it's caused to the guides and things like that. So we're just gonna go ahead. We got new guides, new chain, and new tensioner. So first thing we wanna do is disconnect the hybrid system. So in the trunk here, clean it all out. We wanna lift this up. Then we want to take out this styrofoam. So now we have 2 bolts in the corner holding this little cover on. We'll get those 2 bolts off, 10 millimeter. Okay, there we go. And right here is the service plug. It should be orange, and those bolts are black so you can identify them different than the other silver bolts. So with our plug, let me zoom you in. There's a little green tab here. We want to pull up with our thumb like that, and then this whole thing moves and then out. So to put it in, slide it in, whole thing closes like that, and you push in on the green lock. Pull that out one more time. That's it. So now our high voltage battery is disconnected from our cables that run up front. So now we'll pull off our cover. Now these can be on pretty tight. They're just held on by grommets though, so go ahead and just pull. There's no fasteners holding it down, just the grommets. So this belt has 2 tensioners, one in the front here and one in the back. They are both 17 millimeter 12 point. So whether you have a 12 point socket or a 12 point wrench. This back one you can't get a socket on because the frame is in the way. So what I'm gonna do is pull this off. That'll give me more room here. Also, it'll allow me to jack this side of the engine up so I can get that tensioner bolt to clear the frame. I only need about 1 inch and I should be able to clear the frame, put on my service tool with a standard socket. So I believe these also are 17 millimeter. Let me see real quick. Yep, 17 mil on these. There's 4 fasteners altogether. Okay, we have a jack and a block under the oil pan. Let's see what I can do with that. There we go. See if that was enough. Almost. Maybe 1 or 2 more little pumps. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so I can get my socket on there. Let me show you real quick. Maybe a little closer what I'm doing. So right there is the tensioner. See where the socket is? Just above the frame. This tensioner here also has to be moved, so we move it, and there's a little hole that you put a little punch or pin or something in it just to lock it in place. Because if we pull on this tensioner will tighten up. So you have to lock this one, then move that one to loosen the belt. So for the front one, I'm just using a punch, and that'll go in the pin. I'm gonna use the same tool, like that, move it over, like that. There you go, it's locked in. Okay, maybe a little fatter punch, but that should work. Now we got this one here. There we go. Okay, so just nice and slow. We're gonna pull counterclockwise. Nice and slow, because it's a hydraulic tensioner. Oh, we almost got it. Actually, let me slip it off of this one. There we go. Release, release. Perfect. Takes a lot of muscle because it's hydraulic, so you just have to slowly release it. Okay, got that out. Now we'll unlock this one. There we go. Pull that belt all the way off there. Just let that rest. Yeah, we'll get it the rest of the way off from down below. I don't want to fight this thing the whole time. So we'll go ahead and disconnect all our electrical connectors up here, even this one here. Now on these ignition coils, they have a gray locking tab that locks in. We just want to pull that up with a screwdriver, and then they're just regular pinch, and then you can pull the connector off. So we already had these off when we were doing the diagnosis, but there's a little gray lock tab you pop up. Maybe this is a better angle. So we'll get all these, all this, right there, just so that this harness is free to move as needed. So the manual is only showing 1 bolt for the starter generator, and that's this top one up here. Let me zoom you in real quick. Maybe you can see it right there. That 1 bolt, that's all it's showing. So we'll see how accurate it is. We got a 14 millimeter. Can't just be 1 bolt, that doesn't make sense. So there is another bolt in the front. Right down here, you can feel it. It goes into the block this direction. And it's a 14 millimeter as well. 3-inch extension with a deep socket. Let's see if that's enough. Almost. There we go. Okay. Okay, there's gotta be more. It's still not wanting to come. Let me look around. So it looks like there's another bolt tucked behind here, behind the intake manifold. We're gonna pull this off here, just some clips, hold it in, so just a pair of pliers like this. We'll get these clips. Pops up like that and out. First we'll remove the duct. That one there, this one down here. Got this hose, pop that off, there we go. Just leave that out of the way and bring it around. So we have this EGR tube, it's like a 12 mil, so it's loose. Okay, all this harness can be moved out of the way. If you have a small needle nose, you can get behind and just pinch it together and it'll pop right out of its little bracket. If you don't have needle nose, you can get a flathead screwdriver in there and do one side at a time. Okay, loose, loose, loose. Disconnect the map sensor. There's a 10 millimeter harness bracket down here. So on this, the cam position sensor, it's a little wire that you push from the bottom up and the whole sensor plug can come off. This little wire right there. All right, next it has us remove the throttle body and just push it out of the way. Looks like 10 mil. Move that up and over. That can just stay down. It has a couple coolant hoses attached to it. Now this EGR has 2 more bolts going in, 12 mil. We'll just loosen those up. Might just give us enough wiggle room. So straight back. Okay. Let's see what that did for us. Yeah, that helps. If we need to, we'll pop it the rest of the way off. But so now we have a 10 mil stay here for this coolant pipe. We also have a 10 mil here. We might be able to move this hose a little if needed. Just do that real quick. Let's give us more room if we need. Now it looks like 12 millimeter for these. There's one in the center. Those bolts with a magnet. So it's hard to see, but I'm popping off this electrical connector right here. Let me show you how it works once I get it off. Okay, pull it all the way through just to show you. Okay, so it's locked in like this, and you have this yellow connector that you have to pop up, and then you just pull it out. And that's it. So there's this yellow lock connector that locks it all in. So that's it. You can look at this front one here for some more details. It's kind of hard just to see in there, but we got the electrical connector off. Now we can get our hand in there. There are 2 bolts. Definitely one is a retaining bracket. I can't really show you, but you can see it plain as day right through here. And there may be another one next to it, but definitely one, that's for sure. It's a 12 millimeter. We got a 12 mil on a 1/4 inch. There we go. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Okay, is that the only one? And the other one is just a bracket holding a bunch of electrical connectors on. We'll still see if we can get that off. This might make it easier. That's why it's not working. It's a 10 mil, not a 12. Switched it up on me. I'm going back in with my 1/4. 10 mil. There we go. Well, some of this, looking at it, I might be able to actually get from underneath. So if you're struggling like I am, maybe just go underneath and see if you can get it better. Let me do that right now and let you know what it's like. Just gonna put the engine mount on a little so I can remove the jack because the jack's in my way at the moment. All right, lesson learned. You can get it from underneath, relatively simple. So you probably don't even have to pull this electrical connector off. In case you do, at least you know how to pull it off. Let's see if that is it. Before we do that, let's vacuum this out real quick so no debris gets inside the engine. All right, one more hose up here. Pop that off. Let's see what we can do here. There we go. We might just have to maneuver. Okay, there we go. Still on that. Wiggle, wiggle. Nice. Let's see, what are we stuck on here? Nothing, just this hose. We get bent under like that. Okay. I think it's just a bunch of hoses and stuff. Still in the way. Okay, so we got this little valve. We can undo this hose there. Must be the purge solenoid. We'll just pop that off. There we go, and out. Now these gaskets are rubber, they are reusable. You just have to inspect them. So if they're still raised above the plastic and they're still flexible, then it's up to you to reuse them. If they're hard, brittle, squished flat, then I'd recommend replacing them. Okay, cool. Making progress. So now, looks like we just have to pull these 2 bolts off and then this can come out of the way. Or we can pull the bolts that go into the block. Either way, let's do the ones that go into the block. 14 millimeter. There we go. Hopefully that is it now. Yep. I'll just rock it out. Might get a little pry bar in there to pop it a little. Watch out for your wiring harness and it's right in there. That's pretty snug. There we go. It's a little wiggle and finesse. Wiggle and finesse. It's like an alternator, how it has a little pinch bolt type thing. I'll show you when it's out, because we'll have to move that pinch to get it back in. Perfect. Let me zoom you in real quick and you can see that little pinch bolt. I'll show you real quick how to set it back. Otherwise we'll be fighting it trying to get it back on. All right, right here is a pinch bolt. So as you thread this in, thread it in a few threads. As you tighten it up, this slides within the hole, so it's allowing it to pinch. What we want to do is reset it, so we want to tap it back in that direction. So a few threads here, tap it with a hammer, and we'll watch this. We want this right here to be flush or a little inset into this little ear arm. So our next step, we're gonna jack it up, put it on jack stands because we have to pull this tire off, and I still need the jack underneath the engine because we have to pull this mount back off. So that's our goal. We have a couple of pulleys up front to remove, 14 millimeter. And then we want to remove that tensioner pulley. Looks like 12 millimeter. We'll double check when we get there. So it looks like with these, I'll have to use a wrench. So I have these shallow sockets. I'll put the link in the description. I don't get to use them very often, but when I need them, they definitely come in handy. I'm gonna put the 14 mil on my belt tool, so that'll give it even a low profile. Hopefully that'll be enough, and it is. Hit on it, mama. Okay. There, now that it's loose, I'll get it with my ratcheting wrench. Now that one down there, so it's still not shallow enough for that one, that smooth one down there. All right, back to a wrench. Now, if you need extra leverage, what you can do is get a bigger wrench, put it on like that, and now you have a longer wrench with a little more leverage. Sometimes it does slip off, so just be careful of that. There we go, right on it. Make sure it's on all the way. Give it a turn. There we go. Oh my gosh, that's tight. So I'll get that the rest of the way with the ratcheting wrench. So let me remove this. I'll get that pulley out. So still the 17 mil. One more under this coolant. So 10 mil for that. 2 under here. So those had Loctite on them. So we'll put Loctite back on when we install it. Okay, let's see what that did. Perfect. I'll get this bottom one. So I can't get this one out either. Try to get the bolt out without the pulley on it. There. But that did not help because this AC line is in the way. Come on, people. I got a 10 mil right here to loosen up that AC line. And another 10 mil right down here by the filler neck for the washer fluid. A longer extension. Okay, there we go. Pull up, move the bolt. Perfect. There goes everything. Exactly what I didn't want to happen. So if yours comes apart in pieces like this, one goes on the back, this little shim goes on the back as well, just like that. And then the front, like that. And then the bolt goes through, where's the bolt? Down here. And the bolt goes through all of it, like that. And so that little plastic piece back here, that's what's holding it on kind of tight. So it's hard to get the bolt off from the pulley because of that little plastic piece there. But that's it, that's how it all goes back together. There may be a way to get it out of the vehicle whole, but I had to remove the bolt from the whole assembly. So there you go. So now we still have the tensioner pulley. Those look like 12 millimeter. So we got this one here with the shock. We can get to the top back bolt, okay. And then there's a bottom bolt. I'm gonna get this top one off first, then I'll lower the engine and maybe we can get that bottom one relatively easy. Okay, lower the engine. Yeah, perfect. You can get to it from the wheel well. Let me move you over to the wheel well because we'll get the crank bolt as well. Can't really see with the camera, but it's just right there. Perfect access. Alrighty. There we go. Out. No problem. So now the crank bolt is a 22 millimeter. Get it through this slot here. Oh, easy peasy. Okay. Let's just see, walk it off, or if it needs a puller. Let me set you back just a smidge. It wiggles pretty good, so I think it'll come off without a puller. Yeah, it's coming off. There we go. Okay, we're done down here for now. Let's hop back up top, pull the valve cover off, and we'll set our timing. So the valve cover is relatively simple. We already got a lot of our electrical stuff done. There's one more in the back here for another cam sensor. Comes off the same way the front comes off. There's that little wire that you pinch up. This has already been disconnected from the box, so we can leave that. 4 ignition coils, 10 millimeter. I'm gonna stuff these with a rag before we get too far along. Okay, and these GDIs are known for their carbon buildup in the intake. So that's just something to think about. Since you're already in here, intake is off, clean it out. Also, before removing these, we'll go ahead, blow it out or vacuum it out. We already did that during the diagnosis. This valve cover has been off already. We'll just pop these up. We'll pull this off, pop them up. There we go. Okay. And we do have to take our high pressure fuel pump off. 19 millimeter. Now there will be some pressure, but there shouldn't be a crazy amount of pressure, but we'll still put a rag over the top of it, wear goggles. There we go, just a little squirt, and that was it. We can leave this one on, it's flexible. We'll just move it out of the way. So the pump is a 10 mil here and a 10 mil on the other side. We'll just walk it off. It may be under a little spring pressure, depending on where the cam lobe is. So we'll just walk it off a little at a time. And this should just kind of wiggle up and out. Now you may have to move this just a smidge more. There we go. That's it. Out of the way. Wrap it with a rag. Little fuel still might come out. Pop the dipstick out. And from this point, I believe it's just 10 millimeter bolts all the way around. Okay, should lift up. There we go. Okay, perfect. You can see this chain is just ridiculous. So what we want to do now is set the timing. So we're going to put the crank bolt back in and spin the engine. And there's 2 notches, one on each cam phaser. We want those notches to face each other. And then there's 2 colored marks also on the phaser. We want those pointing pretty much straight up. Let me reposition you so you can see better. Now taking the spark plugs out will help the engine spin easier, but it's not necessary. Okay, just like that. Good. So we were almost right on the money anyway. So let me show you real quick. Okay, so you have those 2 marks lined up at the bottom, and then you see that little tick mark there. There's another tick mark there. Should be colored, or at least on this one it's colored orange. So that is our timing. Cylinder 1, top dead center on the compression stroke. Now we can pull our cover off, get to our tensioner guides, pull our chain off. So for our cover, we're just looking for these bolts that go into the head and into the block. So we'll start with these, 14 mil. Looks like it might be a series of 14s and 12s. These 2 are 12. Pull our ground strap off. There's one in the middle here. You just have to look around where all the bolts are. There's a couple more. Okay, we're just about ready to separate our timing cover. I just wanted to point out that right there is a 10 millimeter. So the rest are 12 and 14, but one funky 10 millimeter in the middle. I removed this just enough out of the way. They're all clips, except under here, there's just 2 10 millimeter bolts. Otherwise, they're just clips. And then you want to unplug this, and then it just easy comes off. And then you get the rest from down here. And you can raise and lower the engine as needed, but there are 4 10 millimeter bolts on the pan that you want to get off. And I believe that is it. So we're ready to pull this cover. Let me set you up. We'll use just a little pry bar and we'll pop it off. So the whole gasket is RTV, so it'll be a little sticky, but I think we could just do a little poppage. Okay, maybe they give you a spot. Sometimes they'll give you a little ear that you can pry on, but I don't see that. Just make sure I got everything. I don't want to pry too hard. You can hear it separating. Just want to make sure I got all the bolts too. If there's one bolt still attached, it'll prevent. I don't see any more though. That's what it feels like. Feels like there's something else holding it in place. So maybe I'm missing something. I don't see any other bolts. It might just be really good RTV. Yeah, there has to be another bolt. That's just too tight. It might just be the dowels, because there are dowels that it locks into, so it could just be that. So I don't see any more bolts anywhere, so it has to be that. I wish they gave you a better spot to pry from. There we go. I think that's all it is. It's just the dowels. So I pretty much got it. I think it's just the oil pan now. Let me go under and pry a little. There we go. So So just getting held up a little on the RTV on the oil pan as well. So the dowels definitely make it a little sticky. So you just have to find a spot to pry near the dowels and then the oil pan. So this should just slide right up, no? Let me move the engine a little. It's just the crank bolt. It's kind of, or the shaft. It's just not quite enough room. So let me move it up just a little more. It's like I'm so close, but I can't clear the crank. Let me lower it. Maybe that's the ticket. Let's see what that does. Yeah, okay, maybe. Now I got the cam, there we go. Okay, so lowering it lower than it normally sits, that's the ticket. All right, there she is. So our next step is to just pull it off. There's a bolt here on our tensioner arm, 2 bolts on our tensioner, and it looks like 2 bolts on our guide on this side, and it should all come off. It's always hard to film this portion of it because of the angle and the amount of space, but hopefully you'll get something out of it. Let's do our tensioner first, 10 mil for those. Okay. That arm can come off, there we go. Now that is a robust arm. So we're still dealing with 12s for our guide. There we go. Pretty good guide too. Yep. Okay, so if you saw that, the cam moved just a smidge. It's okay. It's not gonna hurt anything, but just so you know, when we put it back on, we have this tick mark. We might just have to align it or move it just a smidge back in order for our marks on our chain to line up. So we have little chain marks here. We'll have that on the new one as well. So those marks, in order to line up, we'll probably have to just move the cam just a smidge. All right, got it apart. We're moving right along. So I have the parts waiting for us down at the dealer. So I'm gonna go run, do that real quick, take a quick break, get some water, lunch, whatever you need. But we'll be back to install everything after these messages. All right, we are back. Now we're gonna put the timing components back on. You see there's 2 colored links on the new chain and then a unique colored link. That unique link goes on the crank. These 2 go on the cams. So what we wanna do, the colored links match up with the colored mark, and then same on this, that colored mark. And that's all we're doing. Same on the bottom. So go down below on the bottom. Let me get a light on it. You can see where that mark is. Let me take the light off. Maybe that's too much light. You see where that mark is? So it's not down at 6 o'clock. It's actually more about 3 o'clock. But that's where that unique colored link goes. Actually, before putting the chain back on, we're gonna take a scraper and scrape off all the silicone. We're gonna put a rag over the top of the oil pan so no debris, silicone gets in the oil pan. And then we'll just scrape it off really good. Get some brake clean on a rag and wipe it off really good so our new RTV sticks. We wanna do the same thing to the top of the oil pan. Get all this stuff off. You're just getting as much as you can. Doesn't have to be 100%, just like 99% is good enough. All the way down, and then we'll get the rest of it from underneath. Even the top here where the valve cover goes, that'll be getting RTV as well. Now the chain won't be in the way when we clean that up later. All right, now that we got that all clean, let's go ahead and put our chain on. So I'm gonna put it over the crank first, then line up our first one like that. And just leave this one dangling. Make sure we're lined up, okay? Let me do the crank real quick. All right, so we need to move this cam just a smidge. All I got is vice grips. It has a little slot for an open-end wrench. Vice grips works, just use the slot. And we need to just bring that notch over like that so that it fits on right at the notch. Great. Okay, so that's kind of locked back in like that. Chain is still loose. So I kind of changed my approach. I'll get it on the cams first, then we'll go down, get it on the crank, and put our guides on. That guide bolt dropped. There we go. I need to come back just a smidge on both of these. So hopefully they'll move together. Just a smidge, okay. And that's okay to move them if you need to get everything to line up. I just need to go 1 tooth on the crank is all. So if these can just move just a smidge more. There. Okay, that's my tooth on the crank. Take that off. Okay, throw our guide on. I'm just making that finger tight. And then we'll throw our tensioner on, and that'll kind of hold the guide up. Oh, our tensioner's way over there. Okay, tensioner, 2 bolts. Now there's no gasket for our tensioner. Just goes directly on the metal. Okay, now those are just loose, so it's still loose. I'm just going down, double checking that we're still on our crank mark. We're still on our cam mark. Put this guide on. So it's just all threaded in. Nothing's tight or torqued. Let me show you what everything looks like. So right there, lined up. This one, right there, lined up. Go down to the crank. There, you can see right there that dimple. So that's lined up. So we can go ahead and torque everything down and pull our tensioner. All right, let me show you the torque sequence. So for our skinny timing chain guide, 16.6 foot-pounds, so roughly 17 foot-pounds. For our fat one, we're gonna go the same, 16.6. See what our tensioner is, blah, blah. Tensioner, 8.7 foot-pounds, so roughly 9 foot-pounds. And then we will pull the grenade pin. Okay, got them all torqued. Now my grenade pin popped out while torquing the tensioner, but if yours is still in, we'll go ahead, pull it, double check that everything lines up, which we already did, and we're good to go. Now one thing we can do to just double check that everything is gonna be great after putting the cover on is spin the crank 2 full revolutions. 1, 2. Your marks on the chain will no longer match up, but it should still be timed. The cam marks here should be pointing towards each other, and those should be pointing straight up, with the crank at about 3 o'clock. So once you spin it twice, you can't go by these colored links, but you can still make sure that the timing is good. And as you turn it, you can also make sure that nothing is binding or anything in the engine. But you should be good to go. So now let's prep the cover, and we'll apply RTV on the cover, and then we'll apply a little RTV on the oil pan surface as well. So on our timing cover, again, we just want to scrape it just like we did on the engine side. Get all that stuff off. Clean it off really good. Even here, because this will get a little RTV on this one and on this one. You also want to, and this one down here. So you got 3 spots of RTV you want to get off. And then make sure that these O-rings are still nice and supple. They protrude from the case or cover. Same with this one here. That's for your oil pumps. Those are oil pump gaskets. If they are hard and flat, then we want to go ahead and replace those with new O-rings. Also the front cover seal, we can go ahead, pop that out, pop in a new one. You can pop it out from the back side here. Let me tip it over. And you just drive it in from this side here. Now we're not gonna do that on this vehicle because it has such low miles, and this little seal, this crank seal, is still really flexible, really malleable, and it wasn't leaking before. So we're just gonna leave it on this vehicle. But depending on when you're doing yours, it may be a good idea to replace that. So that's what we're doing now. We're just cleaning up the back side of this surface, and then we'll apply some RTV. So pretty much with the RTV, you're just laying a bead on the inside of every bolt all the way down. So you wanna make sure you're covering the inside. Now some of these bolts that get pretty close, you can go ahead and just do a little RTV around it, a little circle around it. That's up to you, but the main sealing is gonna come from inside the bolt. So you just wanna be to the inside of the bolt on both sides. You also wanna get a little dab on each of these. One thing to keep in mind, if you're gonna clean out this whole thing with brake clean, you wanna take these O-rings out because the brake clean will swell rubber. If you'll notice, like your gloves sometimes will get really puffy when you use brake clean or solvent. It'll do the same thing to these little rubber O-rings. So pop them out if you're gonna spray the whole thing. Now, if you're just gonna wipe the metal surface, don't worry about it. It's just if you're gonna get brake clean in contact with your O-rings. So I'm gonna start from the top here. Just do a little bead all the way down, both sides. Okay, make sure we get these. Kind of hard to get. We just dab it on. Once this squishes on, all this stuff will squish out and make a really good seal. So now on the oil pan, we'll do the same thing. I'm not gonna put it on the bottom of this, which we could put it on the bottom of this, but I'm actually gonna go to the pan, put a bead on the top, and especially in the corners, I'm gonna lay it a little thicker in both corners. So let's do that real quick. Hopefully you can see that. If I can get to it from up top, that would be the best. There's not enough room. Let me see if I can get to it from down here. Yep, so we're just putting a little on the corner, and then we're gonna lay it right on oil pan. Not the best job from this angle, but I think that'll work. Now we're gonna put our cover on. Hopefully we can get it in without too much trouble. There we go. We're just trying not to scrape on anything and take all our RTV off. It's like they just gave us 1/2 inch on that crank. Man, that would be all you needed. What am I doing wrong? Lowered the engine a little. I don't think that helped. So I'm gonna see if I can move just the whole engine back. If the whole engine will move. There, wait. Just gotta be careful what I pry on. Oh, so close. Oh man, so close. How did it come off? Lower the engine. There we go. Kind of. There. Is that it? So now I'm not sure what it's hanging up on. Let me go up a little more with it. There we go. Nice. Okay, there. Let me make sure the crank is on. All right, that's it. Let me put in a couple of bolts. I'm just gonna snug a couple up top and then snug a couple down below, and we'll let it dry for a little bit. That was a challenge. So I must have jacked the engine up at one point and didn't think I did. So yes, you just have to drop the engine super low for it to get on. So we're just gonna snug these until a little of the RTV oozes out. Just like that, do the same to the bottom. So let me show you the torque spec and sequence for that. I'll just hold that up on the screen, and off camera, I'll put all the bolts back where they go. They're kind of a mismatch of sizes, but it should be relatively easy to know where they go back. All right, hopefully you can see it. It says bolts A and B are torqued to 17.5 foot-pounds. So you can see A and B, A and B. And then you go down to this next picture, and it says C, there's only one C, is torqued to 36 foot-pounds. And then F, that's that 10 millimeter bolt, that is torqued to 8.7 foot-pounds. There's a little torque on that 10 millimeter. So that's it. All right, got all our bolts torqued. There will be a couple of holes. That one left over for our pulleys. And then same over here, there'll be 2 bolts that we want to keep out this length, and that'll be for our tensioner pulley on this side. So now let's take a look at the torque for our pulleys. We have our crank pulley that needs to go back on, tensioner pulley over here, and 2 idlers. So tightening torque on our crank ultimately is 152 foot-pounds or 53 foot-pounds plus 47 degrees. So whichever one you're able to do. Now the idler, let's go to the tensioner first. So the tensioner pulley, that has 2 torques. The top bolt B is 36, and then the 2 C bolts are 17.5. Then we have our idler. That is, looks like they're both 36. So let me show you on this bottom smooth idler. How I have it is just like this. I have that plastic back in, so it's kind of holding that bolt all together. Then I have the engine jacked up, and I'm just gonna slide it just like that. And then the bolt is gonna go right in this little pocket here, the head of the bolt. And that'll give me enough space to get the top or the threads in the hole. You can lift up on the AC stuff if you need. There we go. There, just like that. And then now I'll just push the bolt in, thread it in, tighten it all up. All right, we got our pulleys back on and torqued. Nothing fancy other than that one that I showed you. Otherwise, they all went on really easy. So next, I'm gonna put the starter generator on, and then we can put our belt on. I'll do that now before putting everything else on. I think when the engine's movable, it'll be the best time. So let's get torque. Now this one's kind of lame because it only gave us that one bolt, and it's saying right here 40 foot-pounds for that bolt. But there's 4 bolts altogether. It doesn't show me the one in the front or those 2 under the manifold. So I'm just gonna torque them all the same, about 40 foot-pounds. It's the only thing I know to do. I was looking for those torque. I couldn't find them. Maybe they're around somewhere, but it makes sense. If that one's 40, maybe the rest are 40. And then we'll get our belt on. Okay, should just slide right on like that. Get our big through bolt first. I think that'll help line everything up. Okay, now this one goes in the front. Finger tight, now we'll torque all those down. I believe those are all 14. Do this big one in the front last. Now this might take a while to torque because as we're tightening it up, remember that pinch bolt on this side is drawing in. So it has to travel a good amount before it tightens. So it may feel like, oh no, it's just stripping, but no, it's not. It's supposed to do that. So we'll pop this out of the way. Probably in your way though. So all I'm gonna do is, the best that I can, we'll lock this little pin. Okay, something like that. Okay, so let's lock this one first. 17, got a more robust lock pin. There we go. Okay, now we need it on here. Let me see if I can put it on my ratchet, because my ratchet's a little longer and it's a softer handle. That kind of hurt the last time. Let's see what I can do. Nice and slow. It is moving. Okay. Came off the crank, so I gotta try that again. To be honest, I think the belt, the hardest part of the whole job here. Nothing else was this hard. Just need a different angle. Nice and slow. It's moving quite a bit. Not quite enough yet. Still moving, still moving. Nice, nice and slow. Ooh, almost got it. A little more. That's bottomed out right there. Ah, nice. Woo. Oh my gosh, Hyundai. My gosh. That's crazy, just a little crazy. Now we come back to this one. We can loosen it up, take it off its pin. Whew. Okay, awesome. Put this on so we don't forget it. Strap on so we don't forget that. Put our mount on. Before we do that, let's go ahead and put our bolts back on for our AC line. I think we're done. Should just be 2 bolts. Put our mount on. Okay, these are 65 foot-pounds and they get Loctite. I'm just gonna add a little thread locker to each one of them. Okay, throw this back on. All right, we have this mount. So those are 3 nuts and a bolt, 79 foot-pounds. Might have to just move the engine like I am right now. There we go, till it falls into place. Now, I'll just put these on so it doesn't pop off. 79 foot-pounds. All right, throw our valve cover on. That'll seal the engine up. Now, if you're reusing your valve cover gasket, just make sure that it's, again, nice and malleable. Otherwise, go ahead and replace it. There's a seal here, and then there's a gasket right here that goes for your high pressure fuel pump. You wanna make sure that that gasket is seated in nice and good too. So that's that. You wanna wipe everything off really good. So right here on the corners, right where the timing cover and the head meet, there's a little crease. You wanna go ahead and put a little RTV right there, just a dab. Then we wanna clean off right where the RTV is gonna meet on our rubber here. We just wanna get a little brake clean and clean that off so it sticks. Just a dab right there. If you forget, you'll get a leak, or you may get a leak, I should say, out of that spot. Let's wiggle it in. There we go. Make sure our electrical connectors are out from underneath it. Throw all those in. These are right around 89 inch-pounds. Put our high pressure pump on. Let me move you so you can see things a little better. All right, so just how we took this off, we'll go ahead and walk it on just the same. Put our bolts in. A little on one side, a little on the other. Before we get it all the way down, let's put this on. There we go. So the 2 mounting bolts are 10 foot-pounds, and the line is 23 foot-pounds. Put our dipstick in, put our coils in. Now, depending on your mileage, you can go ahead and replace the spark plugs. Now would be a good time to do it since you got the coil packs off. This still has a little over 10,000 miles to go, so we're gonna wait for now. I believe these are about the same, 89 inch-pounds. Okay, we'll wait to plug that stuff in till after we got our manifold back on. I think, is that it? So all we gotta do is put our manifold on, put this little guy on. Let's leave it off because we wanna monitor any leaks just in case. All right, put on our mani. Double check that we're not missing anything down below. No tools, no bolts, okay? It's gotta come this way some more, but oh, there we go. EGR stuff. There we go. I think I've already said it, but with all these gaskets, throttle body gasket, EGR gasket, they are reusable. You just have to inspect the gasket and make sure they're in reusable shape. Otherwise, go ahead and get a new set. Now, I don't have a torque for the throttle body, but it's going into plastic and it has a rubber, easily squishable gasket. So I'd say somewhere around 7 to 10 foot-pounds is all it needs. I'd say the same torque as your valve cover gasket. Couple bolts for our EGR. 3 bolts. You might have to do the towel trick. So if you take a towel or a rag or even a piece of glove, you put it over the top of your socket, it makes for a tighter fit. So now it doesn't come off. You can get places without it coming off the end of your thing. You just pull it off. Now the rag tends to stay behind, but you can just get it Do it again for the other two. So these are about 17 foot-pounds. Let's put on our little hose here. I didn't have my microphone plugged in, so the audio might not be the best for whatever portion of time that was, so I apologize. I'm really just looking for my pliers at the moment. I can use these needle nose. I'm just getting this hose clamp back on. We have that little bracket we can bolt on. I think that's it down here, so we can put this back on. 10 mil. We can start plugging all this stuff in. This harness can go around. All this can plug in. This can go on. This can go on. Plug our big guy in down below. Make sure we have that yellow clip in the lock position. And we got this hose here, has a bracket that can get bolted on. All right, get this for our VVT solenoid. We also have a connector right down here for our map sensor, and then that bracket as well. Okay, we got this here. Now we have our bracket underneath. There's the two bolts, so the 12 millimeter and then the 10 millimeter. We'll get that from bottom side. Throw this one on. All right, we are just about finished. So what we want to do, we can put the tire back on, we can put our little fender well back on, and then lower it, and we're ready to start it.